Here we go. Nice and quiet.
Sound speeds, camera rolling.
Holding for sound.
Last looks. Calling for last looks.
And set and action.
I need to swap batteries.
You know, making movies is hard.
Making movies is hard. Welcome to Making Movies is Hard, the podcast about the struggle of being an independent filmmaker. I am Liz Manischel.
And I am Alrik Bursell.
So this week we have Australian writer-director Justin Kurzel, director of Macbeth, starring Michael Fassbender and Marion Cotillard, Assassin's Creed, also starring Michael Fassbender. I like to say his name as if I'm German. And his latest film, True Story of the Kelly Gang, which hit VOD on April 24th, starring George MacKay, Russell Crowe, Nick Hoult, Charlie Hunnam, and Essie Davis.
Like, working with Russell Crowe, if you're not happy with something that he's doing, like, are you able to give him that note, or do you have to, like how do you manage that? Or is it all just gold and you don't even have that problem?
I don't think you ever go up to Russell and go, "That was shit, mate."
Right.
I don't think you'd ever, and I've never ever done that with any actor, nor should you, because nothing is shit.
But before we get to our interview with Justin,
the network. Oh, we did it at the same time. It's great. So I was really excited about this week because a lot of shit went down. This first one is pretty quick. So there's an article that I read that it's on every website, but the Oscars have made streaming movies eligible for 2020 or 2021. What is it officially? What do you call it?
Oh, I think it's 2021 because the Oscars are in January or February, right? They're right after the new year.
So we already had the 2020 Oscars, and the 2021 Oscars will be next year. Okay, that makes sense. I think I'm down with that. But anyways, it's a done deal. It's happened. And apparently it's only happening this year for sure, and then they'll reassess for next year. But I imagine this is only going to be a 1-year thing. But I don't know. What do you think about this, Liz? This is like essential, right?
Yeah, I feel like we talked about this a few weeks ago when we were like, there were just rumors about this. And we were thinking,
rumors.
Like, this is, of course this should happen. I mean, how only like 5 films would be eligible and plus a lot of films that like vie for the Oscars come out right before, like in that fall period, which we haven't even hit yet. And that may likely be when the virus comes back around. I don't know. I know nothing. I'm not a virologist. But point being, yes, we have to have more and more films in contention, and we have to identify, we have to recognize the situation that we're in technology-wise and environment-wise. We can't go to the movies, so we have to consider streaming films.
Yeah, and what I'm really curious to see is, like, will movies that never were going to have much of a VOD or much of a theatrical run and, like, only going to be VOD movies, are they going to have a chance now? Like, are other movies that weren't... No, you don't think so? So, like, a movie that, like, has a lower budget, wouldn't afford a theatrical, we're not going to see them in the Oscars.
No, saying. I mean, as I've discovered through listening to this podcast and hearing myself, I'm a pessimist. I've identified myself as a pessimist now. I know who I am. And I just think indie filmmakers get screwed over and over again, and there's no scenario that benefits us. So if you're pointing to, like, larger budget indies that wouldn't necessarily do a robust theatrical but may have a strong digital release, no, I think we'll still not be considered and still never win our Oscars until we're in our 50s and 60s and 70s and, like, do movies about dying people.
So what do you think it is that makes a movie, like, if you're taking that equation out and it's like, oh no, those movies that didn't get theatricals aren't going to have a chance. What is it, like, name talent, big budget, and then is it like, they have to be, like, in the know, like, in, like, movies that were already going to be Oscar contenders because of the people who made them, kind of thing?
I think so. I look back at when I was a critic and I voted for just the Critics' Choice Awards. So this was just like one subset of these awards that films are in contention for. And I remember the amount of packages I received every day that were just sheer bribery and just reflected the amount, like the budget level of the films that wanted to vie for these awards. I remember I got like cupcakes that spelled out the word cake for the movie Cake with Jennifer Aniston. Like, sure, it's like, you know, I don't know, $10 to make these cupcakes and send them to me. But, you know, that's a lot of people that they're sending cupcakes to. So I think the same kind of stunts are going to happen for the Oscars if they're allowed. I don't know. I'm not a DGA member. I'm not in the Academy. So I don't know, like, what the stipulations are. But I think the budgets for marketing are going to go to other things in order to garner attention from the voters.
Well, when you received these cupcakes for Cake, did you then think, oh, golly, like, I better write a great review for this movie? Or did you just eat the cupcakes and then say, this movie sucks, or whatever it was going to be?
I mean, I liked that movie, and I think I'd already reviewed it by the time I got the cupcakes, and they were delicious. I still remember them. But I remember being a critic, and critics wouldn't admit this, and I would say for sure not all critics do this, but there are critics who will be extra enthusiastic about a film in order to garner pull quotes for like a poster or a trailer and to like amplify their profile. And so there is kind of this exchange of scratch your back, I'll scratch yours in this world of film criticism, which seemed like such a nerdy world to be like that. So I personally feel the same films are going to be in contention. But what do you think? Do you think we have a chance? You're the optimist. Give us your optimist response.
I don't really know. I guess I'm so disconnected from the Oscar race and who is eligible and who is not, and like what makes your movie one that people want to actually vote for. Because, like, you know, there's lots of great movies that I thought like should have definitely had Oscar contention, you know, and I guess I feel like we're just seeing it's like genre movies seem to be often ignored until like Get Out got a little bit of love when that movie came out. But like there was this movie The Babadook, which I thought was like an excellent film.
I love The Babadook.
And but beyond just a great horror movie, but just like a great movie that like made me cry too. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this has to have like some kind of Oscar attention, like even if it's just best foreign film or something, you know, and then nothing, of course. And
well, as a woman director, like, so
guess that's part of it. But yeah, it just, I don't know. So I mean, I would just love to see movies like, you know, just smaller movies that are great, that aren't like, you know, have these huge budgets behind them or huge cast behind them get love, you know. But yeah, I don't know. It's just it's hard to say what's going to actually happen, and it's also hard for me to know like what qualifies for that movie or not. Like, you know, we had the filmmaker for The Other Lamb on earlier this year, and that was a really great movie and a tough ass movie, but like a great movie. I have no understanding of if that would have been an Oscar movie, you know, regularly, or if it is not even doesn't have a chance, you know, because of the size of it, because it's got fancy American producers. It's got a lead who has been in things, you know, and like world-renowned directors. So I don't know. Is that movie in the talk or no? I mean, and what makes that movie in the talk or not? Is it just the reviews? Is it everything? Like, is it the numbers? Like, I don't get it.
I think it's money, unfortunately. But I agree. I can't connect all the dots of where all that money is spent. I mean, I just think back on something like the Independent Spirit Awards, which really reflects a support of more indie-themed content, right, and indie budget levels. And I would say a lot of films that I thought were really stellar films weren't in consideration for the Independent Spirit Awards either. So it's hard to get. I think I still, whatever, this is a very paranoid perspective, but I still think there's some club. It's not, there's no, you know, there's no house to the club. It's not a clubhouse. Like, you can't actually go in, but I still think there's a level of name recognition and budget level and notoriety you have to achieve until you're really considered and on these lists. And so I just think maybe, I hope Mel Grzada wins everything, but
of course,
if not, it'll come in the future for her.
All right, well, now on to the main articles this week that I just was completely in love with. But so this huge thing happened where Universal announced that their movie Trolls World Tour is tracking to make more money for the studio on VOD than the original did in theaters through its theatrical. And it's really kind of complicated, the numbers. It's not like simply, oh, the VOD numbers were bigger than the theatrical numbers, but it's more like the amount of VOD numbers that they had and the fact that they get more of that money and they don't have to split it with the theaters makes it that it's more profitable, or it's going to be more profitable than the other movie is. So they made some statement and some announcement of this, and then they said that they'll be doing more VOD straight, or premium VOD, I think is what they called it, straight releases in the future. And then, AMC banned Universal movies from their theaters indefinitely.
Juicy.
Which was hilarious. But, I mean, did you read about this? Were you following along as this stuff was happening?
Yeah, I love it. I love it so much because I think that the world of distribution and marketing is very cold. And when it comes, when there's a weird, spat between two entities, I just eat it up because it's like drama. It's so exciting. Yeah, I mean, I don't blame AMC, actually, because I think, yes, AMC is a massive chain, but often I feel for my art house exhibitors and I want them to make money because I think as independent filmmakers, we love the theatrical experience, and there's a lot of people in theatrical expedition who just really care about independent film. I mean, AMC's not that, and AMC actually has an independent theatrical program where they allow, films like ours to have a chance. So they're trying. And Regal, I would say, is, also very, very large. I understand the perspective of AMC and Regal, and I get it. But I also think that, they're being a little bit dramatic right now.
They came out a little hot. Yes. I mean, this whole banning thing is a good idea, I guess, I suppose, but it doesn't work if not every chain does it. Every chain has to do it, because if AMC bans a Universal movie, I'll just go to Regal and see the Universal movie, or one of the other major theater chains. And AMC isn't even in every market, so that's another reason why it's kind of silly, But then this other thing happened a couple days later, where the Regal Cinemas company kind of made their own statement. And they didn't do the same thing that AMC did, but they basically just said that they would ban any studio that didn't honor the windows of release that they have agreed upon, Yeah. So it's a similar thing, but a more I think rational, calculated sort of statement. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, and I don't really know how they define windows, or I'm sure there's a way that Universal or any studio could be well, this movie isn't going to be a theatrical within that theatrical window. It's going to be a VOD only release, and right. Will they be okay with that? Who knows? I don't know. I kind of think this is a little crazy because we've got Netflix, we've got Amazon.
Well, this is where I'm of two minds, because I think that as a filmmaker, we should be able to decide how we want to release our films. Right. But then when it comes to these massive studios and these massive theatrical chains, they really will impact the film economy with their decisions. So I get that it's very scary and tenuous for Regal and for Universal, but at a really base level for us, I'd be so angry if someone were you can't release the film the way you want to release it, the rights owner. I'm now coming back around and I'm wait a second, they can't tell me what to do. It's my movie.
Well, I just think it's really hard to decide what is because I'm sure Universal Studios, just pretty much every studio, has an arm within them that releases direct to VOD movies that don't get theatrical releases, right? So at what point do you say oh, it can't be a VOD, it has to be a theatrical, or we're gonna ban you? Is it budget level? Is it what your original decision with that product was in the beginning? I mean, it's gonna be hard, I think, for people to identify when a studio is doing this sort of thing and not releasing a movie in theaters like they normally would, because there's a kind of gray area, right?
Well, yeah, and also I think it's just tough, especially for family films. Those are such money makers for studios. Oh, yeah. We, Sean and I, my partner and I, were talking about this with our friends the other night, and Sean was mentioning that with VOD rentals or purchases, it's a household. It's a per household cost. That is my child dropping a pot outside of our door. It's per household. So that is a one-time fee versus, $18 tickets at Regal or, a AMC City Walk or whatever, plus concessions, which is where they really make the money, which is, and all these other parking, maybe they get a cut of that. I don't know. It's family films that I think may be the target here. I mean, Trolls would make them a lot of money. in the theaters.
It's interesting. If you do the VOD rental for $5.99, you have that option, or going to the theater for like a day release movie. You save so much money by just doing the rental, because two of you for $5.99 versus, two of you for whatever, probably like $50 in the end, So to me, it's like I love movie theaters so much that I will always pick the movie theater over the VOD situation if I can, because it's just so much better. And that's like how the movies are supposed to be seen anyway. So again, I stick by what I said a long time ago when this all started, is that, just because this is happening now, it doesn't mean that movie theaters are going to go away. It doesn't mean that people aren't going to want to go to the movies as much just because we've been living in this VOD world for 2 months or whatever.
I'm writing an article about this, actually, about the state of distribution in COVID-19 for Movie Maker. It's going to be like as part of their summer issue. And I started looking up, like, are movies still being released? And it's like Tenet is still slated. By the way, Sean's working on Tenet. It's still slated to release in mid-July. And then there's like a Purge movie that's still slated to release in the summer, and then Wonder Woman is still slated to release in August. So they are planning on it.
Yeah, Christopher Nolan is not going to let go of the theater until he has no other choice. Yeah. I think he'd probably rather delay the movie, a couple more months or whatever, than not have it released in theaters, because he's such a theater freak, which is great. And we should have Sean on the show to talk about working on Tenet, because I'm sure there's a lot of great things that he's learned on this process.
Maybe he'll listen then, because he doesn't listen to the show.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Don't worry. My partner doesn't listen either. And it's been 5 years, so, I'm used to it. It's fine. I think this is really fascinating, and I just can't wait to see what happens next. But yeah, I really hope that I can see Wonder Woman in the theaters and Tenet in the theaters later this summer. That would make me very, very happy.
Yes.
So Liz, you've got mail.
I do?
Well, not really. But what you do have is some new iTunes reviews, and so I figured we'd read those. These are brand new, fresh as fresh can be iTunes reviews.
Kiefer Rama gave us 5 stars and said, so good, on April 21st. And Kiefer Rama said, this podcast already was great and just keeps getting better, even in these tough times. Not just for all the superb advice and impressively non-boring shop talk, but also for the general spirit lift one gets from lively conversations full of honesty and humor and warmth. Clearly useful to film folks at all levels and from all backgrounds. It reminds us of the value of independent storytelling and offers a real sense of community. That's very sweet, Kiefer Rama.
So do you know who this is?
I mean, my friend's name is Jonathan Kiefer, so I just feel like it's got to be Jonathan.
Yes, Jonathan Kiefer, who also is very sweet and comments on Facebook and such, and says nice things to us. So thank you, Jonathan.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Also, I believe supported my film Alternate. Thank you, Jonathan. Very sweet of you to do that. And here's the next one. So good. 5 stars by Walking Candy Apple, April 25th. Interesting guests and great advice. Love the new segments they've added in addition to the interview.
Aww.
And I think we both know this is Amy Taylor.
Amy Taylor.
Yeah, who's been on the show before. Thank you, Amy. And also thanks to Amy for being our newest patron on Patreon.
Amy!
Thanks, Amy. You're the best.
Amazing. Love Amy. Oh, we just read her script. She invited me to like a table read of her latest script. Oh,
wow.
And it was done over Google Hangouts. So it was like 8 of her friends doing a table read over Google Hangouts. You got to hear it and comment. It was really, really cool. It's going to be a really good project.
Talking about Patreon leads directly into our next segment, The Call. We do have a Patreon page. It is www.patreon.com/MMIH podcast. You can be like Amy Taylor, who gave us $1 a month, which would be amazing. And we would really appreciate that. And we do have merch on the way. Merch is on the way.
Yes. It's going to be ready in late May. And then we have to figure out how to ship it to anyone who's interested, but it's going to be good.
Do you want to talk about how many items we have? Like how many exclusive things we have and like what they are?
Is it 50 or 100? It's a limited number of items.
Ooh, wow. So pretty much all our patrons will get one. And then pretty much if we get 50 patrons, then they'll all get one. But at what dollar level are we going to release these things at?
$1 million.
Okay. So The first 50 people to donate $1 million a month to the podcast will get one of these enamel pins. Are we allowed to say what they are?
They're badass enamel pins, and they're from the logo designed by Lucas Culshaw, and they look really great, and they're from Wizard Pins, and I'm very excited.
Oh, awesome. Well, I can't wait to see these things. And when we get them, we'll put a picture of it on the Patreon page, and we'll make a new tier. So people who are at that tier, whatever it is, $1 million, $2 million, $100,000, then you'll be able to get one of these enamel pins.
Yeah, maybe 20. I don't know. Maybe just $20.
While supplies last, guys.
Yes.
While supplies last. If you want to be like Kiefer Rama and Walking Candy Apple, you can go to iTunes and leave us an iTunes review, and that would be really great for the show. Even just a rating would be great. We're climbing. We're slowly getting up there. I want to get to 200 ratings or reviews. I think that would be a really nice number. We're at like 139 right now.
Ooh.
So people, help us. If you don't have words to say, you could always just click and leave a star rating. Those are always great too. And even better yet, if you're a brand new, spanking new listener, you've like just started listening, maybe you only have heard the new episodes with this new format. We would love to hear from you, especially. Like, what do you think of this craziness? Do you like it? Are you going to go back to episode 1 and listen to this from the beginning? What do you think? You know? And be honest, as long as you leave a 5-star review.
4 or 5. 4. Let's be open to 4.
Okay. We're not perfect. There's room for improvement. You could also leave reviews and ratings for all the places. Spotify, Stitcher, I believe we're still at. I think we're at a lot more places now. I don't really know all the places, but I think we're at places. So wherever you see us, rate us. That'd be great. But Liz, I'm really excited about this next segment. Soap Dish. Are you familiar with this movie?
I actually am. I truly love this movie.
Yeah.
Truly.
I just saw it for the first time on Friday. I thought it was fantastic. My partner loved it. She's like loved it since she was a kid.
Yes.
And so she kind of like you, like surprised I hadn't seen it. And I kind of thought it's perfect for this segment because they're all about ratings and trying to like, make the show good. And like, they have a little bit of distribution in their show too, and I know it's a silly movie, but I felt like that was a good one. Or Tootsie was the other option. I was like, Tootsie could be because, it's also in that same world. But I think Soap Dish. I think we should just go with Soap Dish.
Yeah, also because we're dishing a little bit, right?
We are dishing, yeah.
And also
Perfect.
It's just such a good movie. I remember I saw Soap Dish recently, rewatched it, and I was like, if I ever make a movie half as good as Soap Dish, like, I'll be okay.
It's so bonkers and fun and creates its own reality, and it really does a great job of being a movie within a movie within a movie kind of thing, which is just wonderful.
Well, I talked earlier, and I said I was re-listening to some episodes, or listening for the first time for some episodes.
Right.
And I was listening to the Andrew Schrader episode, and we had a little section where we're talking about COVID-19 and how that's going to impact independent filmmakers and VOD numbers. Anyway, I talked to an indie distributor on Friday, and he said streaming is up like 2 times what it was for him and his company.
Nice.
So I was wrong. In that episode with Andrew Schrader, I was like, I don't know, do people have time to watch things when the world is falling apart? I got real emotional. And and you were like, yeah, we are stuck inside and people are going to watch movies. And so you were right. I was wrong. People are watching content like gangbusters, and they're even watching library titles. So not just watching new things. The guy I was talking to was saying his 2 titles that were getting the most amount of traction were library titles, which just means like older, non-new releases. And they were both from like 10 years ago. So there's hope. There's hope for us right now.
Well, I just watched Soap Dish, so like, what is that? That's a library title if there ever was one,
You're right.
And I feel like you're seeing a lot of these movies from the early 90s, late 80s pop up on streaming platforms in the last couple weeks or months or whatever. Like Netflix has a bunch that were just added. Amazon, like Soap Dish was one that was added on Amazon recently, and so I think these titles getting added is a sign of these companies realizing that they need to feed the beast being us as consumers, so.
Well, yeah, so I've learned that streaming is up, but actually it doesn't mean the revenue translates to more and more money for independent filmmakers. When it comes to certain deals, like, so Amazon, their per streaming I'm going to mess this up because I don't fully understand it quite yet, but there's essentially a per streaming rate that's based off of like whatever an algorithm that they have in-house. So you don't know going in when you release content on Amazon Prime, like through Amazon Video Direct. Amazon Video Direct is just the way to upload things onto Amazon Prime and Amazon Video. And so it means that like anyone could do it as long as the film passes QC. So let's say you upload your film on Amazon Prime and tons of people are watching it. Unless it hits this algorithm, Amazon has the right to lower the per stream rate for your film to like 1 cent an hour.
Why?
They are basing it off of some other like, I don't know if we have access to this data, but it's like all subjective. Like they can go into their algorithmic mathematical calculations and figure out that this is like a not often searched film, or this is a genre, like whatever it is, there's different data points that contribute to what that specific per stream per hour amount is. And it's subjective. They get to decide what it is. They don't tell you up front. So this is what's happening to indie filmmakers, is that right now streaming is up, but those per hour rates are being squeezed and are shifting without really us having any power. But that's just on things like Amazon Video Direct. There are alternates. So you can work with a distributor to get your film on like IMDb TV, but not as many people are watching content there. So it's just kind of like you need to figure out where do you have the most amount of control. So yes, people are watching content. Your film may get seen more during this period, but you may not make more money. And so I think that's the problem with the situation right now.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I just keep on hearing from my investors. Like I got an email last week. It's like, oh, how's the movie coming? You should finish it now so you can like sell it to Netflix or something, you know? Like everyone is like really aware of what's going on and the need for content, and I'm just getting pressure to finish this film, and I still don't think it's going to be done before like August at the earliest, maybe July. So I might miss out on this maybe, but
no, you won't.
Oh, you don't think so? That's
what I asked this nameless distributor about. I was like, everyone's asking me about this content drought, you know, and I was always saying, no, nothing ever benefits indie filmmakers. Well, he seems to think that it's not right now that's going to benefit indie filmmakers. It's like a few months down the line. It's like 2021 when Peacock has emerged. I think it's just emerging right now. And we have like Tubi and Jupiter and all, whatever, like 15 million different platforms.
HBO Max
and like CBS All Access. And they're all building up content libraries to rival Netflix. So it's not Netflix opening their doors. It's like everyone else gathering up titles to compete with Netflix. So they're calling this another streaming wars. This is just part of the streaming wars. And so I would say it's not necessarily now you need to put out your film, though it's not the end of the world if you had it done right now and you were marketing it. It may be beneficial to you a few months down the line.
Wow. Okay. Cool. So it sounds like I'm in the perfect zone, basically.
I think so. I think you're doing great.
Which is great because like I have another movie that I produced too that's also going to be done around the same time. So it's like I'll have 2 movies with my name on it that are like involved in this cycle. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
I feel very lucky to be in this situation.
Well timed, sir.
Yes, indeed. Any other thoughts or tidbits in this segment?
I think just this was the I was wrong segment, but I didn't talk about film funding when we talked to Andrew Schrader. And, you know, nonprofits that are funneling out grants to filmmakers, they're still doing it. And I think I always had this fear that all of those would be pulled because of coronavirus and, the economy and all those things. But grant money is earmarked for that fiscal year or that fiscal quarter or whatever it is. So all that money has already been allocated to be spent right now. So we don't need to worry too much about grants right now, but we may need to keep an eye out for how these nonprofits, how these film support organizations are going to fare, what they're going through right now for next year. Interesting.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know about film funding larger than grants. Like if like people are willing to put money into movies right now. I haven't asked anyone since I'm making a movie.
Right.
but my hope is always that like the investors I'm working with now are going to love my movie so much that they're going to want to make my next movie. But, I think that's still like so a little further down the line for me. And I was always been talking to my producer Jeff and hearing what he's working on, and like he had a few irons in the fire before this happened, and I think everything is just frozen for the moment on future production. But when this gets lifted, like I don't know what it's going to look like. Are we just going to go right back into planning making movies, or is there going to be a little bit of a period of waiting? I don't know. I'm really curious to see.
Yeah.
And any update on your film? Like, are you closer to knowing a filming date or any developments this last week?
No, we redid our lists for talent, so we're going out to different people, but we're sending out these like emails asking if talent is available for our dates, and no one's responding to them. And then I talked to another casting director, and he was getting bites. So I think it may be because we're SAG Ultra Low and that we're in that space. But I mean, this is part of this article that I'm writing for Movie Maker is like how, and something we've been talking about for weeks, you and me, Alrik, is like how can indies prepare for when we do get the green light? And I'm still lost. I have no idea because I think so much is based off of SAG, and whatever SAG says is going to make or break the next few months of indie production. I think.
And has SAG made any statements yet about what they're going to do?
I haven't even looked. Honestly, I haven't Googled it. Ignorance is bliss. I'm just going to pretend like they haven't issued a statement and that I just don't know yet.
We'll try to research that for next week just so we don't completely sound like idiots. But if anyone knows, email us and tell us so then we don't have to be idiots and we can know. Yeah,
if you have a project that's casting right now or you're about to go with a project, like I'm dying to talk to someone who's about to go.
Yeah, how did you do locations? Were they all secured beforehand? Did you just keep up the conversations with those people? Like, what does that look like? That's what I'm curious about. So I think it's time to go on to The Player.
The Player! We have some actually very thematically related.
Ooh.
I found 3 filmmakers to talk about how they funded their films. These are projects that have already completed by now. But we have Amy Taylor, Walk and Candy Apple fame.
Oh, yay.
We have Kelsey Maples, who produced Lena, this short that I just directed.
Oh, cool. Nice.
And then we have Stefanie Davis.
She's very nice and very vocal on Twitter. Love Stefanie's tweets.
So they all weigh in about how they funded their projects.
This is Amy Taylor. I'm a writer and director. You're asking about fundraising this week. I funded 2 projects so far via Kickstarter, a web series and a feature. And both times it was one of the most nerve-wracking things I've ever done. I remember on the web series, I was constantly checking to see if there were any new pledges. And at about 3 a.m. one night, I refreshed the page, and someone had pledged $1,000, which was way more from one person than I had ever expected. So I was on this huge high, like I just got an adrenaline shot. And then the next morning when I checked, and there had been no more pledges, because really, why would someone be pledging to Kickstarter at 3 a.m? That's a pretty rare occurrence. But, there were no more pledges, and it was this huge crash, and I was like, we're never going to make our goal. This has all been for naught. But it was like, well, you just got $1,000 pledge, so, calm down. So we did end up making our goal both times, thanks mainly to friends and family. Kickstarting is definitely a real roller coaster.
Hi, I'm Kelsey Maples, producer and actor, and recently I was running a crowdfunding campaign for a short film along with the film's writer. And toward the end of our crowdfunding campaign, we decided to do something a little outrageous to get a few more followers and donors. So one Saturday, we strolled into Times Square with a couple of pie crusts and a bunch of whipped cream, and we each stood on a platform in the middle of Times Square while our friend live streamed us on all of our crowdfunding social media platforms. And we each threw the pie crusts filled with whipped cream into the other's face. Needless to say, it got quite the reaction, and we ended up hitting our green light goal.
Hi guys, this is Stefanie Davis. I am a writer, director, and producer in narrative film, and I'm also getting ready to work on my first documentary. The way that I fund my projects is that I typically work extra gigs on my survival job add on more, reality show PA gigs and more events in our area, some wine tastings, things like that, to get some extra cash, put it in a separate account. And then whenever it gets to a certain amount, then I go ahead and make my film. I did that with Hot Mess in a Wedding Dress. And then we also did a Seed and Spark campaign to gain a little bit more funding. I figure, in my case, I have to prove myself before I can get investors to start funding my projects. And thankfully, I have a bachelor's in finance, and so I do know a lot about staying on budget and keeping things on track. Thank you guys very much for everything that you do on your podcast, and have a great rest of your week.
All right, well, I'm really excited to hear our conversation with Justin Kurzel, because this was like, one of those interviews where I was just like, it just oozing goodness and oozing information. And I was a little nervous to talk to this guy because, he's sort of like where I wish I was as a director, or where I wish I will be one day, to have like an indie hit that did really well, get your options to direct your next movie, end up working with Michael Fassbender, directing a video game adaptation. I'm going to be honest, like, oh my God, like that would be incredible. I would love to do that. Let me direct the next Resident Evil movie, please. Oh my gosh. And then to go on from that, and then that not be a good experience, and then to go on and recover and then make this movie, which I really just think is incredible. You could just tell who he is as a filmmaker when you watch the movie, and it's so well done, and it's got such a perspective, and it's super entertaining. It's just like a really good movie. Let's go to our talk with Justin Kurzel. We have with us today Justin Kurzel. Is that how you say your last name?
That's right, yep.
Awesome. And he just directed the feature film True History of the Kelly Gang, which I saw this morning and was awesome. And we do this thing on the show, Justin, where we just do a rapid fire round of questionings just to get the basic details of the film out to the audience. So I'm going to go first. How many days did you shoot?
28.
If you could talk about it, what was the rough budget?
Small. Yeah, small. It was about sort of 10, 11 million type thing.
How long did you work on it from the inception of the project to it being released?
About 8 years.
Wow, 8 years.
How many people were on set, crew and cast included?
Probably about 60.
And then out of all your projects, how difficult was this one?
Well, they're all difficult. They've all got their own DNA. And this one was sort of difficult for many different reasons, from Assassin's Creed to Snowtown to Macbeth. So they're all hard.
Yeah, well, we can relate to that, even on a small scale. So I saw the movie. Liz hasn't seen it yet.
This is my shtick, Justin, is I don't watch the movies. I'm the asshole. And Alrik is the good guy who watches the films.
The thing that really struck me about this film, every movie that I've seen, like recently, and I can't even remember the last time I saw a movie that actually told a story in chronological order, especially one on such a grand scale as this film. So I'm just curious, like, was that always like the decision, or that come in editing? Like, how did you come to this approach for the film?
Yeah, it was pretty much governed by the book. The book's really chronological in regards to kind of starting off as Ned Kelly as a boy, and sort of seeing all those influences in his life and the sort of mentors, good and bad. And the film to Sean and I, the writer, was always about sort of the evolution of a boy to man to then sort of the ironclad monitor at the end, which, there was a stage where we were calling him Monster kind of at the end. And it was sort of to see how, this kid can't sort of outrun his destiny and fate of becoming a kind of Kelly and becoming kind of what he becomes at the end. And, no matter how much he kind of tries to kind of turn or shift or find a way out, he's always going to sort of end up, being what he is at the end. So that became a very conscious decision in regards to the structure and, and even in the chapter headings throughout the 3 different stages of his life.
And because I'm the asshole who hasn't watched the movie, can you tell me a little bit about your attraction to the subject material? I mean, is this something that you were the origin of, or were you brought on to this project and, willingly jumped in?
Yeah, I was brought on. I was asked to do it sort of in 2012, so just after I'd finished my first film, and I was at the London Film Festival with it. And a producer approached me. I didn't think the book was available because Neil Jordan was going to make it, and then Gregor Jordan made his version of Ned Kelly. So it never got made with Neil Jordan. I'm sure he would have done an amazing job, but Hal Vogel, the producer, got the rights to it around then. And it just sort of, I wanted to make it, but I was really sort of scared of it. Like, making a Ned Kelly film in Australia is a bit of a poison chalice. There's been a lot of films made about him. Everyone has an opinion about him. He's an incredibly known character in Australia. So you kind of know that you're on a hiding to hell a little bit with it. And that probably kind of turned me off it a little bit. And then after finishing Assassin's Creed, and having spent 6 years in London, I just was really homesick, and somehow picked the book up again, and just understood it for the first time in a way I hadn't before, in regards to, the idea of someone's history being stolen, and this character desperately trying to kind of write his own history before he dies to his unborn daughter. And the book kind of pokes and prods at why we are wanting myths and legends, why we turn people's history into whatever we want it to be, and that felt really fresh and really current too, and that was sort of it. I was sort of hooked on it then, and thought, I want to get back to Australia and really sort of delve into a sort of world that I sort of feel familiar with and feel excited by.
So I have one more question about the editing of the film. Like, did you ever get any pushback or suggestions from anybody on the team, or any notes that said, oh, you should start with a shot of George MacKay as an adult and then we'll jump into the past? Did that ever come up? Or was it always no, everyone's on the same page, we're doing it like the book?
No, I mean, you do. When you get into an edit, you start flipping things and changing things kind of constantly, and sometimes it goes really against what the original idea and kind of thought was. But I think chronologically we always sort of thought it would evolve like it does. So that was sort of really important to us.
Alrik has told me that the lead is half naked in the cold for the majority of the film, and so I would like to hear you talk about that.
Ned Kelly's, he's always got his shirt off. He's got lots of scenes where he's out in the cold, with not many clothes on. And I just worked on a project where we had issues with actors in the cold at night in the snow. And so I was just wondering, how did you deal with that?
Well, we always wanted to kind of make Ned really physical, and kind of as he was sort of getting closer and closer to becoming the ironclad monitor, that he almost kind of didn't feel the cold anymore. And that he was sort of desensitized to weather and to things around him, and was sort of almost kind of becoming quite frenzied. That was just a sort of trait and something sort of interesting that George had picked up on too, in regards to when you're high on adrenaline and focus and stuff, that you sort of don't feel the conditions of weather, that your body kind of almost creates its own sort of thermal energy. So that was sort of just something we kind of discussed and thought it added to the image of his sort of fever and madness that he was sort of heading towards, and focus, I guess. A lot of the pictures of 1870s Australia, it was a pretty full-on time in terms of sort of the labour that was sort of going on. These guys were huge, in terms of their muscles. They were felling trees. They were doing massive hard labour. So there was, every photo that we saw of any guy with his sort of top off was this, it looked like he was sort of part of the UFC, he was sort of this sinewy, incredible kind of bull. And you do suddenly realise, wow, most of the labour was really, really physical and hard, and the diet would have been really simple. So that kind of, there was a bit of inspiration there in regards to kind of how, George kind of got that physique in the end.
That's such a thoughtful answer to my objectifying question. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Justin.
Was George just okay being cold all the time? Or did you guys have heaters and blankets right off frame to keep him warm? Or was it actually warm when you were shooting? How did that happen?
No, he had blankets, and I mean, he was amazing. Look, he was amazing. I mean, the reason I worked with him is because I just saw someone who desperately wanted to act and desperately wanted to try something new and test themselves and put themselves into really challenging situations. So there aren't many actors I'd be able to do that with. Most, I think, would turn around and say, F off.
Right.
George, I just knew wouldn't, and that's really inspiring. It's just so inspiring being around someone who's just wanting to put everything into something, body and soul, and that was a huge reason I cast him, because I knew he would.
Yeah, and I mean, it really comes off in the film too. It's pretty amazing, like the transformation that he goes through just as the character changes, and just from like just the performance. It was striking. I was going to talk about this bigger question about, like, your cast is incredible, first off, and like, just assembling all those actors together for one project, especially on a low budget, must have been pretty challenging. Can you talk about how you got all those actors to be in the film?
Yeah, I was really lucky. I mean, I'm sort of, a lot of those roles too were support roles that actors like Charlie and Nick and Russell kind of did. So it was really, it was the work, really. It was that they read the script and they really loved it. And I think there was something exciting in that they were kind of going in and out of a film. It didn't have to rest on their shoulders, that they had, and sometimes those support characters are really fun, so they're either really wicked or dangerous or funny, or, and I think that the actors got a real sort of hoot out of sort of playing something that they wouldn't normally play. And Russell was someone who was with the project for a very, very long time and was very loyal to it. And we always saw him as Harry. And, it was a long gestation in regards to kind of seducing him to kind of do the role. But he was pretty all-encompassing, pretty sort of devoted to it, which was, very exciting for us.
You mentioned that you thought the budget was small, and then I heard the number, and I was like, "Oh, wow, that's a large number." But it's a period piece, and you're dealing with very high-profile actors. What were the major constraints of this budget?
Well, yeah, it's really hard doing period on a budget of that level, and with the scope that you've got an enormous amount of cast. It's told over 3 separate time periods. You're in really formidable landscape, especially shooting in snow. It's really hard to do kind of large extras scenes with a sort of budget like that. So, and this is Australian money too. It's not US. So it's lower than even that. So, and then you've got to sort of find a way to pay all that cast. And so it goes pretty quickly. And, it needed a little bit of scope and scale to it as well, to sort of allow you to sort of understand the context and the environment of it. So that all means that you've got to be really clever about what you film and how you film it, and you're doing it on a shoestring. So it's tough for everyone. I always find that pre-production is always the toughest time, and you're killing your babies and you're trying to adjust, and the film really becomes something completely different. Through pre. Well, I've always found, I don't know, maybe it just happens with me, but it does change.
Can you talk about like some things that you had to scale back on due to budget that you originally had planned to be different in the film, or were you able to like actually utilize that budget and get everything that you wanted on screen?
It just changed. There were like big sort of town scenes, and at the end at Glenrowan when the police come, the train comes right up to Glenrowan. You see, many policemen get off in full period costume and so forth. Well, you can't do that. You don't have the days to shoot it, and you don't have the money to clothe them, and you can't get a train. So you then sort of start to think, well, how do you solve that? And a lot of your answers really, for me, come through point of view. How do you? Okay, well then, what does Ned see? And what is Ned's kind of aperture? And let's sort of film to that. And I had a similar thing on Macbeth when I did that with Michael Fassbender and Marion Cotillard, that at the end of that film, 10,000 British soldiers kind of approach Macbeth, and he says, and 10,000 soldiers are in front of me. And, we had the budget to do 10, so you end up trying to find ways in which you find scale and ambition, and really use point of view as a way of dealing with some of those kind of budget restraints, because it's, I wasn't in a position where I'm sort of in Braveheart territory where you can get a whole army to come down and be that opposition. You've got to, got to find other ways in which to kind of create what it is that your lead character is kind of seeing.
The whole strobe lighting effect thing that you did throughout the film, and then the way that you did shoot that the ending of the film with the light, and then those, I don't even know what you call it, like fluorescent white cloaks or whatever. Can you talk about how you came up with that and like how you were able to pull that off?
Yeah, I think, again, as we sort of felt the film was becoming more impressionistic through, us sort of closing down the aperture and literally sort of seeing what Ned was seeing in Glenrowan. I mean, we actually put the camera through the helmet that he wears as he's sort of shooting all the police, that it was much more interesting to us to sort of go, okay, so what does Ned feel? What's Ned's sort of fever dream here? And the Australian landscape's pretty electric. When you're out in the middle of the bush, the stars really do look like they've been plugged into a kind of power cord. It's pretty, it's sort of buzzing. So we got quite inspired by the idea that it felt much more strobed and electric, and somehow that sort of kind of gave you the sense of manicness and energy of what sort of Ned was feeling, and as opposed to just sort of endless shots of police firing back at him. And, that became a kind of point of view choice, but also become a kind of stylistic choice as well.
So Justin, you sound like really confident, and you're clearly very talented, and you've had this illustrious career. So I want to just dig in a little bit. Do you feel like you've made it? Do you feel like you've achieved a certain level of fame and notoriety that's going to make the rest of your career less painful, less of a hustle? I mean, and if you feel that way, when did you start feeling that way?
No, I don't feel that way at all. I think I never have felt that way. I still don't. I still think the last film I made will be my last. I think it's a very precarious industry that we're in. It's not like you studied to be a doctor and you're a doctor, and there's work, and there's kind of like this really, your career in film, it really comes from your own dogmaticness and kind of an obsession about it, and luck, and, the success of what you've done last, and people wanting to work with you. Well, I've seen a lot of directors and know a lot of directors, and some of my friends that are finding it really, really hard to find their next film, and they're good directors. So it always feels achingly insecure, always, the film industry and TV industry, and you can feel that all the time. And especially, I think, being a director, I think a lot falls on a director. So, if something doesn't work, you do take up a lot of the sort of blame for it. So, you never, I think, completely, and I never feel like something's successful. I don't know how you sort of, maybe apart from it commercially, although, one of my most successful films was Assassin's Creed in regards to box office, yet critically, it was really kind of, I got a huge amount of negative kind of reviews for it. So it's really hard to judge kind of what's successful and what works and what doesn't, and whether what you're gonna do next is gonna get you your next job. So it's unfortunately I still feel as insecure as I did the first time I made Snowtown, my first film.
So how do you deal with that? Like what are some things that you do to push you through those tough times when you do get those bad reviews, or things aren't looking as up as they were, on the last project?
Well, the only thing that gets you through is that it does sort of cut out all the crap and ego, and you actually realize that, why you're in it is because of the work. So what happens is you pick up a book and you start reading, and you become completely involved in that, and you start working on another project and with another writer, and the work becomes the thing. It's not, you're doing it because you love it. You're not doing it because of money or anything else. You're doing it because you can't not do it. So that starts to remind you why you love it, and why you sacrifice, and why you got into it in the first place. So I've always found that whenever I'm sort of down or not, or doubting myself or whatever, or just thinking too much about myself, and that as soon as you start getting involved in the work again, starting to think about characters, starting to think about stories, starting to think about something as a film, I always find that I sort of suddenly lose myself. You know, the fear of it all sort of starts to subside a bit, and you start to get really kind of pumped by the creative process again, which is actually the goal. That's why you do it, and that's what keeps you going.
As you keep leveraging projects to bigger and bigger casts and bigger budgets, is your approach changing? And if, for example, did you approach, Russell Crowe differently than you did George MacKay? Do you feel like you're adjusting to different scales and hierarchies of projects as you evolve as a director?
Yeah, I think every actor is different and is at a different stage of their career, and I think it's up to you to kind of work out where you fit within that. I think, meeting George MacKay, who kind of runs off a tube, running late to an audition, runs in sweaty, I'm auditioning and he's got 10 minutes, is really different from, obviously going to meet Russell at his house and spending, a day and a night talking about the project. I mean, it's a very different hat. So I've always just wanted the actors to feel comfortable and open with me, no matter who they are, and be able to kind of come up with ideas. Usually the actors have the best ideas, and they always are sort of thinking. And, most of the time they've got 10 times more experience than you. Like I've only done 4 films, and you walk on a set with someone like Russell Crowe and you look at the kind of the unbelievable experience that he's had on numerous projects, and you kind of go, this guy knows a shitload more about filmmaking than I do. I think you have to be quite humble and quite have your ears and eyes open a lot when you're working with those sort of actors, because they're always going to give you some amazing stuff, and it's up to your job to inspire them to do that, to be really solid and strong about, why you're making the film and what the vision is, and come up with ideas and thoughts too for them that might kind of spark them into giving you the gold dust,
Like working with Russell Crowe, if you're not happy with something that he's doing, like, are you able to give him that note, or do you have to like how do you manage that? Or is it all just gold and you don't even have that problem?
I don't think you ever go up to Russell and go, "That was shit, mate."
Right.
I don't think you'd ever, and I've never ever done that with any actor, nor should you, because nothing is shit. Nothing is shit. It's all good, and it's all different, and sometimes things don't work, but you don't want anyone to freeze up because you're going, oh, so many times I've thought this is the way a scene should go and this is the way it should be played. And then an actor does something that completely is not what you've thought, but is kind of different and better. And the number of times where my first gut response is that is wrong has really shifted when I suddenly see it in the edit. And I go, wow, that's just different, and I would never have expected that. And it works. It's just work, and it actually what makes the scene really unique and unexpected and original. So I'm always sort of looking and sort of hearing, things out. But no, with Russell, you just, he's really aware of what he's doing as well. You don't need to, like, you'll come in and go, oh, I didn't quite kind of get that or whatever, and he'll always look at you too and go, have you got what you want? And that's an incredible thing to say to a director. It's an incredibly open, beautiful thing to kind of say. And that actually allows you to go, you know what, I'd like to try one more like this, and I'll always flip things. I'll always, like, if I do feel like I've got something, I'll always go in and just, for the hell of it, let's flip it. And yeah, this scene's kind of sad and dark, and your response is that, well, what happens if you make a joke within that scene? What happens if you come in and you actually kind of have an energy that's lighter? I don't know, like always do something that you just wouldn't normally do, that inspires the actor to free them up to just try something different. And sometimes those takes are always really great because the actor just relaxes and trusts and does something that they didn't expect they would do.
I work with my partner and he's an actor, and I always find that I'm more frank with him and more transparent with him than I am with any other actor. And I wanted to hear about what it's like for you and your wife.
I think that's right. I think that I can say things to Essie that I probably wouldn't say to another actor, and she can definitely kind of say things to me that she wouldn't say to another director. There's been so many celebrated partnerships that, that have born amazing stuff from husband and wife teams or partner teams, you know. So, you know, and I think that probably comes from the fact that you just have a, you know, you just know, and you just cut between all the kind of politeness and kind of, you know, the wall there, and you just go sort of straight for it. But having said that, though, you know, I was really aware too that I was on, you know, Essie was on set with a whole bunch of other actors that I had a particular, that, you know, it would be so easy for me to say, you know, that's shit, Essie, you know, and I'd get away with it. And Essie would know why I would have said that, and she'd come back at me. But you don't kind of want that to happen around other actors, you know. You want there to be an equality that's sort of going on, and a respect that even though she's my wife, that you know, she's being treated in the exact same way as the others. So we tried to do that a lot with Kelly, and it was a good thing, because most of the time you've got the other actor right next to her, and you make sure that they're involved, as opposed to some cliquey thing that's happening between, you know, Essie and I.
And her performance in this film is like incredible, and the role that she took on is very challenging and a tough role to pull off, I think. And I was just wondering, like, was it really challenging to direct her in that kind of role, or was it just another role?
No, I knew it was gonna, like, I always knew that I wanted her to be in it, and I knew it was going to be physically really demanding for her, and you know, it's terrible watching your, you know, wife get hit, and, you know, it's like, I mean, you know, the scene that I thought I would be so okay with, and I was okay with it, but I did sort of start to kind of go, this is absurd, was when I had to direct Essie giving fellatio to Charlie Hunnam. That was like first day.
Right.
You know, when Essie gets down on her knees and we kind of strap a dildo on Charlie, and you're sort of rolling up, and, you know, suddenly everyone sort of leaves the set and you're sort of shooting, and you are watching, you know, yeah, it's a character, but it's your wife kind of, you know, in a sexual kind of act with this, you know, this beautiful man that's just arrived on set from America. I mean, there is a moment there where you're kind of going, God, this is absurd. You know, it is interesting how quickly you disappear into character, and you're so involved, like suddenly she's just so become Ellen that you know, it does sort of drop away. But I do remember kind of going, oh, this is a little stranger than what I thought it was going to be.
Charlie in specific, like, did you have any time to work or rehearse with any of the actors before, like, doing a scene like that? Or was it like literally like he just arrived the day before and then you meet him on set and then you have to direct that scene?
You know, it's really different, you know, with each actor. Like with Russell, it was, you know, a lot of talking, a lot of going through the script, very little kind of rehearsal. You know, a lot of that was sort of done on set. Charlie was the same. Whereas the boys, the gang, there was 2 weeks of rehearsal, 3 weeks of rehearsal, and I actually got them to join a band. Like I booked them into a gig, and, you know, to 350 people, and sort of on the first day rehearsal said, right, in 3 weeks' time, you're playing at a gig to 350 people at a really amazing kind of bar in Melbourne, and under a name, you know, and you've got to come up with a set, and, you know, half of them didn't play musical instruments, and so they kind of came up with this incredible kind of set, and 2 songs made into film, and they arrived and played to 300 people, and they played 8-9 songs, and everyone thought that they were this new band. And then the next day they arrived on set and they were the Kelly Gang. You know, they were, you could just tell that the process of being in a band, of creating music, is like nothing. You know, it bonds you and gets you close in a very, very quick way. So that was a completely different sort of process to like working with Russell and Essie. So it all depends, really. It depends on what the character wants as well. If the main energy is, okay, these gang of boys, well, then that's the energy that you bring to their rehearsal preparation. Like, well, what is that? Well, that's, I want these guys just to look like they know each other. Yeah, it varies. It varies a lot.
I'm obsessed with that. I wish I went to that gig. I wish I was in Australia to go to that rock show.
We have a lot of first-time directors or aspiring filmmakers who listen to this podcast. And so the question is, like, after you finished your first independent feature. Do you have any advice for like a director in that position when their first feature is done, they're ready to go after their second feature? Like, what should a filmmaker be doing in that position?
Look, it's really tough because I genuinely think your first film needs to be like a first album. Like, I think you need to do everything possible to make it distinct and and push it. Like just push and push and push the choices, because you'll never get to do it again. You'll never ever get to do a first film again, and you'll never get to be that brave again. It's suddenly it becomes much more complicated. Coming off that, to then think about what you're going to do second, especially if you've had a bit of success. I think you can stew too much in that success and stew too much in kind of like, okay, what am I going to do? And my biggest recommendation would be to follow it up really quickly with something. Break that kind of sophomore kind of, dreaded second film type thing, and just try to get on to the next one really quickly, and not be too precious about it, not think too much about it, about sort of the success of the one that's come before or what you've done, because you'll never be able to repeat that. Just get on and keep going, because you'll just learn and that will then go to the next thing. But and I got into it a little bit. You start to worry too much about what that second thing should be, and I spent 2 years sort of trying to find something, saying no to a lot of things, and was on something and then it fell over, and then Macbeth happened really quickly. It was like, and I never wanted to do it. I never wanted to do a film production of Macbeth. It was just a weird synchronicity of like Michael and Macbeth, and this is ready to go, and okay, off you go. And it was really spontaneous, and it was actually the best thing that I did, and wish I'd done something before that. Had something ready to go after the first one, because you get caught up. You start traveling festivals, and you're suddenly in a sort of time zone of interviews, and you sort of lose the fact that you should be thinking about the next one, and that you shouldn't be kind of stewing in the first. So, no, that would be my only advice: is don't be so precious and just go for it and get on to the next one.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, we like to end the show with, similar to how we start the show, with a little bit of a rapid fire question answers. We have 5 quick questions to ask you, and then I swear you'll be free, Justin. What's the first film you ever made, and how do you feel about it now? It could be a short, could be a micro short, whatever it is.
It was Meeting Misty Rain, a little short film I did for a festival here called Tropfest with Essie in it. So the first ever short film I did was with Essie. And how do I feel about it now?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a little embarrassing. but I was trying things out. And I did it on black and white. It was a black and white film, and I remember just how expensive it was and to get the film developed, and I just put far too much money into it. And yeah, but it was great. I just remember being on set and just kind of going, I want to do this. I want to do more of this.
What's the best filmmaking advice you've ever received?
I asked Steven Soderbergh once why he makes so many films. It was around that sort of time, where I think he made Traffic and Erin Brockovich in the same year. Like, he was sort of overlapping. His whole thing was, you've just got to keep moving. You just got to keep moving. And as soon as I sort of stop, I feel like I'm kind of going to drown. So, I need to keep moving, keep doing things. And Michael Whittenbottom was the same. I asked the same sort of question to him, and it was, don't sort of fall into the retrospect. Keep going.
Do you have a goal as a filmmaker?
Just trying to get the next one up. It really is.
If you could go back in time, what's one piece of advice you would give yourself?
Don't worry so much. Don't just be yourself, and trust that what you've got will, and your ideas and your thoughts will be enough. Don't worry so much about all the other kind of noise around being a director.
Finally, is making movies hard?
Yes, but it's unlike anything else. It's the most extreme experience, because you're a group of people that come together for one pounding moment of time. It's a very strange job. Like, you all become a family on something that doesn't last for very long, and you create bonds that are deeper than you could ever think. And then suddenly you sort of depart and you don't see each other. So it's an incredibly strange sort of job to do, but it's unbelievably rewarding in those kind of relationships that you forge in very quick periods of time, that you can never sustain. So just be so loving of when you're doing it. You know, because even though it's hard, and even though most of the time you're sitting there just stressed out of your mind, it is a kind of hyper real place to be, surrounded by a whole bunch of people working on something that you love doing, and you know, knowing that it's only going to last in this small bubble. So make sure you enjoy the actual doing of it.
Excellent. Wow. Yeah. Last question. Do you have Twitter? Are you on social media of any kind? Like, do you have a website? Where should people go to check you out?
I have nothing. I've debated whether. I have nothing. I don't have much to say really. And if you want to check me out, check out the film. Like it's you know, it's a really crazy time at the moment, and you know, we were going to be in the cinemas, but you know, and now we're, you know, streaming, and they're the new sort of home cinemas at the moment. So you know, please go out and see this. I think it's going to be a real ride. It's, you know, I think westerns are so synonymous to America, and it's definitely a western, this, but with a real twist. So hope you go out and watch it and find it, and but no, I don't. I'm not interesting enough to have a Twitter account.
Well, congratulations on the film, Justin. I mean, it was quite something. I really enjoyed it a lot, and you know, I definitely think even if you can't see it in a theater, watch it on the biggest screen you can with the best headphones or the best surround system that you have, because it is quite an experience. And I really love the sound design and the music and the whole, like, you talk about point of view and perspective a lot, and yeah, you nailed it, man. It was awesome.
Cheers, man. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening, and thanks to Justin Kurzel, Judy Merrick, and everyone at Katrina Wan PR and IFC for making this interview happen. The movie is out now. You can find it on all VOD platforms. And actually, it might still be in drive-ins. Like, it did a thing where they had The Wretched and True History of Kelly Gang play in a double feature back-to-back at a number of drive-ins across the country. So it's kind of cool that, like, you know, two movies that we had the directors on are playing together at drive-ins right now. So I don't know if that's still happening. I knew it started on the first, and hopefully it's still happening when you hear this. So if you do see that, go check it out. But just watch it on VOD if that's your only option. You can check out our website at makingmoviesishard.com, where you can find links to things we talked about in this episode. If you want to send us an email, tell us what we're doing great, tell us what we're doing wrong, give us a topic suggestion, whatever you want. You can send us an email to podcast@makingmoviesishard.com, or find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at MMIH Podcast. I am Alrik B on Twitter and Instagram. And Liz, where can you be found?
At Liz Manischel on Twitter mainly, and Facebook.
And please, if you like the show, tell a friend. As we said earlier, you can give us a review on iTunes or Stitcher or any of the other places. That's always great. And finally, thanks to our producers Greg Holdsman and Joshua Sterling Bragg, editor Allison Stoney, and the whole Bloodstream Media team for making this episode possible. And we will talk to you all next week. Thanks to Justin Kurzel, Judy Merrick, and everyone at Katrina Wan PR. Oh, I should go back.
Is it Katrina or Katrina?
Is it Katrina?
I thought it was Katrina.
Katrina? Did I say Katrina or Katrina?
You said Katrina. You didn't say Katrina. You said something else. I don't know what you said.
Well, let me say it again. Thanks for listening, and thanks to Justin Kurzel, Judy Merrick. Oh, God.